What's going on, growers? James Prigioni coming to you live from Jersey. Growing food is my passion, and I think everyone should have the opportunity to grow their own fruits and vegetables. So today, I want to show you how you can grow your own fruits and veggies in containers. Let's go! One thing that I like to emphasize on my channel is that you don't need a lot of space to grow your own food. In fact, you don't need any land at all. You can grow in containers and in pots on your own patio, just like I'm doing here. We've got a lot of different stuff growing on this patio, and I wanted to do this to show you that you can grow food in a very simple but functional way. A lot of the pollinators are out today, and they're working on some of my cantaloupes here. We've got some watermelon, some tomatoes, peppers, a bunch of different stuff. But this is the goal. This is where we want to get to, growing a lot of this stuff and soon be harvesting. Let me show you how I got to this point. The first thing we need to focus on when growing plants in containers is the container, what pot we're going to actually use. So there's three things we need to focus on when it comes to containers. The first one is that you have to, this is the most important, you must have drainage holes at the bottom. That's so important. If you don't have drainage holes at the bottom of your bucket, then the water is going to sit, it's going to go anaerobic, which means without oxygen, and the roots need oxygen to grow or they're going to die. So you'll have root rot, and that will not be good for your plant. So holes on the bottom, number one, so important. The second thing that's important is the color of your pots. Right here I've got a white pot. This is convenient. This is not going to absorb the sun like some of your black pots are. I'll bring you right here to this black pot. This was just an extra pot that I got from a fruit tree. This thing's going to heat up a lot in the sun, which isn't a big deal if it's the spring or the fall or you live in a northern climate. But if it's a super hot climate, that'll heat up too much and possibly cook your plants. So the color of the pot is going to be important. And there's one other important thing when it comes to growing in pots, especially these 5-gallon pots like I'm doing right here, and it must be food grade plastic. So you don't want to just get one of the standard Lowe's 5-gallon buckets. You want to make sure that they're food grade so that you're safe actually growing the food in there. So these pots I just got at Home Depot or Lowe's. They were a couple dollars, but they're going to last a little while. They're super light. This right here would be nice to grow in, these clay pots, because they're porous, which means like they absorb some of the water and then the roots could suck it back out of the pot, but it's very heavy and they crack easily. And also in the winter, they'll freeze over and then unfreeze. So they're not really good in a northern climate. You got to bring them inside. It's not ideal. So that's why I love growing in these 5-gallon buckets right here. Now that we've chosen what containers we're going to be using, let's focus on the soil. When it comes to soil, the most important thing is that you do not use native soil for your potted plants. It's way too dense. You want to either make your own soil or buy some potting mix. So right here is a good potting mix I like, Happy Frog, but when you're buying soil, make sure it's potting mix. You do not want to use topsoil in your pots either. That can get expensive if you want to buy your own bags of soil. So what I like to do is just make my own mix. Let me give you my ingredients for a simple way to do it. The simplest way to go about it would be 1/3 of compost. Right here I have a nice mushroom compost. So we've got a 1/3 bucket full for this. And then 1/3 of peat moss right here. And you can either use peat moss or cocoa coir, whatever one you want to use. I personally like using peat moss because the structure of it more, even though it's not as environmentally sustainable. And then also you have to add perlite, 1/3 of perlite. So 1/3 of all these will give you great fertilization and nutrition with your compost. And then these two are going to help with soil structure and water retention, which is super important when you're growing in pots. This soil mixture, it's about as simple as you can do it, but there are a few things I would suggest adding, especially if you want to grow things like cucumbers and melons, things that aren't super acid loving, and that's some dolomite lime. So this dolomite lime is going to bring up the pH of your soil because we're adding this peat moss, and this peat moss is acidic. So we want to make sure we're raising that soil pH back up. The dolomite lime, it's also going to add calcium and magnesium. So I'm making here about 1/2 of a cubic foot of soil, and I'm going to put 2 ounces of lime into that. Before I start mixing all this stuff together, I wanted to mention something about this perlite, and this perlite is good stuff. This is the bag I got it from, and any ingredients and everything I use, I'll put links in the description. But this is good perlite, this is pure. I went to Home Depot or Lowe's and I tried to get their pure perlite, and I noticed on the package that it says it's enriched with Miracle-Gro plant food. I definitely do not want that. So make sure you're paying attention to the stuff you're getting. I just wanted pure perlite, so that's what I got here. Let's start getting all this stuff together now, and we'll put the compost in first. I'm gonna make 1 bucket of soil. That's why I have 3 buckets that they're all 1/3 of. So I'll put the compost in there first, then I'm gonna put the perlite in. And just be careful, you may wanna wear a mask when you're doing this because some of the dust and stuff can come up, so just be careful. Next we're gonna put in the peat moss. Just put that in. Then I'm going to add the lime. And there's a couple other things you can add. You can add blood meal if you want, and a bunch of different rock phosphates. This is some rock dust. This is azomite. Greenway. This stuff is awesome. I'll put links in it. So I'm just gonna add a nice handful of this stuff. And then it's suggested that you kind of just wet it down a little bit so everything doesn't get too airborne. I don't like wetting it too much because I like to get a good combination of things. Then I'm just gonna mix it with my hands because when it comes down to it, playing in the dirt and playing in the soil is like one of my favorite things. So we're just gonna mix this up and get a nice consistency. You see there's a lot of perlite in here and a lot of peat moss. So you don't have to go these exact ratios. This is just a good one for potted plants because you're gonna find out that one of your issues is with the soil drying out. The soil will dry out so quickly if you don't make a good soil mix and put in things like peat moss and perlite, things that are excellent at retaining soil moisture, but also building soil structure. This is all mixed up good. Next, we're gonna grab our food grade 5-gallon bucket and fill it up. I'll just fill it by hand. One thing to note too is when you're filling up your buckets and stuff, make sure that you fill them up in the location where you're going to plant the stuff. Because once they're filled with soil and they get wet, these things are gonna be heavy. So have them in the location, have them in the spot that they're gonna live. And I'm not gonna fill this up all the way. I'm gonna fill it up to about there. This way I can add some compost and top dress if I want to. Next, we wanna saturate this completely, fill it up with water and get it all mixed because we don't want a lot of the soil at the bottom to be like all dry. We want to make sure this thing is completely saturated. And we don't really have to worry about being oversaturated because we have nice drainage holes at the bottom. So I'm just going to continue to mix this. You'll notice as I'm watering it, it's starting to compact a little bit more, so we'll put some more soil in just to make sure we're about 3/4 full. And then water it in again. The water is all absorbed into our soil and it's looking really nice. We're not worried about sitting water because we have the nice drainage holes at the bottom. Now I'm just gonna show you how I transplant. Right here I've got a fig that I've actually cloned myself. I did it previous in the season. You can check back at some of the videos. What I'm gonna do is just take out some of the soil so I can easily drop this fig in. You can see how wet the soil is all the way throughout. That's what we want. Then I'm just gonna loosen up the sides and you can see I reused an old pot that I got from somewhere. So, and then I'll just flip it upside down. The roots don't look fantastic, but they still look pretty good. We'll drop this in. Actually, before that, I'm gonna put some mycos on it. This is a inoculant of the Mycorrhizal Association. This is a fungus that forms a symbiotic relationship with the roots and they help support one another. So we use some of that. I'll place this there. Actually, I can probably put a little more soil here. And then we'll just backfill around the plant with the soil. And I've got a little more soil if I need more off to the side here. So it looks like I need still just a little bit more soil. And I'm gonna grab it. So this one isn't wet yet, but I'll just water it in. And we wanna push this down, not really hard, but relatively firm, so we're filling any airspace. And then since I added some more soil, I'm just gonna water it back in one more time. And that's how easy it is. You don't want to ever really fill your pots all the way to the top though, because you want to be able to water it and allow the water to sit in there, then sink in. You don't want to, just have the soil all the way to the tippy top. That's not going to be ideal for your plants. Another convenient thing about these 5-gallon buckets is the handles on the side. And these leaves are a little green, but that potting and that transplanting with the new fertilizer in the soil should really help. It's another hot day here and Tuck is actually just sitting inside watching me while we're right outside on the patio because it's just too hot for him. He's dedicated though, he's still watching out for us, he's still guarding the garden, but it's tough because we added a whole nother section this patio, so he's got more garden area to protect. This guy never has a day off. Now that we have our pots chosen, our soil made, and our plants in them, we're starting to grow. And when you get to this point, you're gonna notice one thing you really need to stay on with potted plants is watering them. They'll dry out extremely quickly, especially once they start to get really large because the root base is taking up a good percentage of the pot. So it's a good idea to have some mulch in there, like I have for my fig tree right here. This is a nice wood chip mulch, and I'm having a little bit of trouble getting wood chip mulch at this time of the year, just with everything that's going on. But the fig is doing great with the mulch. You can see it's got some nice little figs on it. So watering is, again, so important. So A good mulch will help you. I'm actually gonna get some leaves and then crush those up and use those as a mulch. But a good way to know if your plants need to be watered, a good way I like to know is I like to check by weight. So I just watered this, it's very heavy. I know that. So I'll come out in a day or two and I'll feel the weight. If I feel like it's getting pretty light, I know that I need to water. You don't want your plants drying out though. If they completely dry out, that'll really, really negatively affect them. It'll make the roots go searching for water and it'll just stress the plant out. Potted plants and ones growing in containers like this need to be fed more often with a fertilizer than your ones growing in the ground, because everything that the plant needs to get has to come from this container. So I like to feed my plants regularly with some fish emulsion. That's a good one. I use that for basically any kind of plant and it works real well. But another one that I use if I really want to get big, healthy, great plants is this one right here. I love this product and it's a great company too. It's Ivy Organics and this is an all-purpose, it's the super blend and it's got your NPK, but it also has a lot of the macronutrients. So it's got a lot of stuff in there that a lot of the other simple fertilizers just don't have. So you can use this as a spray and it'll work for 20 gallons, or you can use it in a few different ways. One way I like to use it is as a top dressing. So I take some of this stuff in here, I'll take like a tablespoon or so, mix it into here, maybe a little more till I feel like it's about right. Then I'll mix all this up in some of the soil that I just made. Then I'll go around to some of my plants, like we'll say this pepper right here. This one's growing real well, as you can see, beautiful pepper. Looks like we're gonna have a lot of nice peppers. It's starting to flower. And then I'll just put top dressing around the base of it. This has the fertilizer in it. So every time I water this in, it'll just soak it all in. So that's one way that I like to use this fertilizer, but it's also a great when you use it as a foliar spray. Whatever fertilizer you want to use, that's up to you. But just make sure you have a lot of the principles. That's what's important when you're growing with pots. You can also use some seaweed extract and stuff. Like I mentioned, there's a bunch of different fertilizers. Whatever you think works well for you, then go ahead and use that one. So I'm just gonna water this in and that'll feed the plant nicely. I want to show you some of the stuff I'm growing. One of the things that I haven't shown you yet this year, and I'm super excited about, I have it in the food forest too. Right here is the red Malabar spinach. Look at this, such a cool plant, a beautiful edible. And this is called Malabar spinach. It's not a true spinach, but it tastes really good and you can eat it like a spinach. The reason I love this is because once spinach is basically done for the year because it gets too hot, is when the Malabar spinach starts to come up. So it's like we're always eating these fresh greens. Great in stir fry, great in salads, and they have this thick, succulent leaf to them. Full of water, an earthy flavor, just really a fantastic plant overall. So easy to grow, and I think in the tropics it grows as a perennial, and just around here we grow it as an annual. But it's something great you got to put into your garden. You'll notice this section though, how what I try to do to get more space out of the container area is I put this fence up back here. So whenever you're container gardening, what you got to try to do is be as creative as possible and try to utilize the space as best you can. That's why we always try to go vertical if possible. I've got all my cucumbers and stuff growing back there, and then all my peppers and stuff growing in the front. Another thing that we should think about when we're container gardening is how we're situating our plants and the arrangement of them. For instance, the location I'm in right now, the south is right that direction there, straight ahead of me. So if I point this way, that's the south, and that's the north. And when it comes to patios, you can't really choose where you put everything, but if you could, try to make sure your shortest plants are on the south side, and then that ascends up to your tallest plants being on the north side. This way, when the sun sets, rises in the east, it'll sit in the south and then set in the west. So it'll rise in the east and hit all this stuff, and then when it sets in the west, it'll hit some of the stuff in the back. But you want to make sure that you're not having all your tall plants in the south here, because when the sun comes up and it sits in that south side, if all your tall plants are in the north, it'll shade everything on that far side. So again, shorter plants in the south and then ascending with your tallest plants in the north. Before I let you go, I just want to show you my setup. It's very basic, and the reason I did that is because, like I mentioned in the beginning, I wanted it to be simple but functional. So I just have a couple concrete blocks, 2 here and then 1 here, and then just a piece of wood on top of it. I think it's about a 2x8 or 2x10, just something that's pretty wide to keep the pots here. Then what I did was just put up this fencing, and I fortunately found a 6-foot fence, which is pretty rare. Usually I can only find like 4-foot ones, but I got a nice 6-foot fence here, and then put in these posts and just T-posts and just knocked them in. And that's made a perfect area for me to trellis along, getting all that extra grow space. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you're encouraged and motivated now to get out there if you have any space and get some potted plants in so you can be harvesting your own natural, organic, just amazing tasting food. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share with your friends. Don't forget to check out the merch down low. And whenever you're shopping on Amazon, use our Amazon affiliate link to start your shopping. A lot of the stuff that I'm using, I'll put down in the description. And also, we're on Instagram, posting stories regularly now, and we're also on TikTok. So check that stuff out. Tuck and James will be back at you again real soon. We